going on, what that behavior is. Okay, that's all well and good, but what does that really mean? What does that get you? That lets you answer questions like, you know, am I using my infrastructure efficiently? Is my application, is my runtime tuned appropriately? Like, why did that thing fail? What was going on when it failed? How do I troubleshoot it? Why is this thing running slower than normal? Like, those are the real day-to-day questions that when you start monitoring and starting to increase that yourself on that maturity curve there, start taking kind of a more proactive look at observability and what's going on with your, you know, in our case, runtimes, but any applications in your organization. You can start answering these questions more easily, faster, avoid them altogether, right? So that's really what it's all about. And, you know, kind of get right into it, like, you know, why would we even care to invest in setting this stuff up? Because it's a little bit of work, right? Set things up, set up new applications, infrastructure, wire things together, set up the alerting and monitoring, get folks trained up on those things. Basically, underpinning all of these is saving either time or money or both, right? Optimizing how you're using your servers. Are you way over provisioned? Are you paying way too much in AWS and Azure costs that you need to? It takes you forever to stitch things apart and figure out what went wrong. Look at this log for this thing, look over there for something else. How do you correlate those things to figure out the whole picture? And it all just kind of goes along that same theme. Really, and especially as you grow your integration, implementation, more APIs, more events, more tools for agents, all that kind of good stuff. You need to be able to monitor that stuff at scale. If you don't have a way to be able to search across all that activity, draw correlations, define alerts, monitoring thresholds, anomaly detection, that kind of stuff, you're going to be challenged with keeping up with that demand, and you get back into that kind of reactive mode. So that's why we're talking about this. That's why we care about this particular ability in this case here. But super simple. I mean, I think especially helpful, you know, kind of depending on your level of familiarity with this. And this is a really high level, but just kind of wanted to level set a few things here. You know, typical observability situation, right? You have applications in your environment, in your data center, wherever. You basically, typically what you will do is you need to connect that thing to one or more monitoring applications. You've probably heard of some. These are some common ones here, obviously not all of them, but we're talking about tools like Datadog, New Relic, Splunk, AppDynamics, SolarWinds, whatever they rename themselves to pull this information. And what kind of information are we talking about here, right? We're talking about logs from systems, we're talking about application metrics, server metrics, that sort of thing. Tracing, trying to follow individual transactions as they hop through these complex systems with multiple pieces and components or microservices, that kind of thing, so that we can get our arms around all this stuff and be able to monitor it. What's typically involved there is you have these vendors will provide an agent that you install next to that thing, next to your application, that hooks in through a variety of means, holds out that information, and sends it across. The whole point is that this stuff is happening and pushing in real time. You're getting all that data and all that analytics into these monitoring tools. So, makes sense? A little level set, hopefully not too basic. All right, so now let's kind of put the Boomi lens on it, right? So, I know we took that poll about kind of maturity, but as it relates specifically to Boomi, how many folks here have instrumented, if you have local runtimes, have instrumented some level of hooking Boomi into like one of these types of tools? How was that? All right. Kind of a leading hypothetical question. Let's put that a rhetorical question. You know, it's doable today. You know, and you might be asking like, well, Adam, why are we talking about this new observability thing, open telemetry? Why should I care? I already got things set up. Well, you know, if you've gone through some of the setup today, you've kind of maybe gone through some of these challenges, and you already got set up. Okay, that's great. But there are some things that we're looking to do with what we're working on here with the enhancements that will provide even more capabilities and more insights than what you can get today. But some of the things that you kind of run into with setting up observability and hooking your runtimes into those tools today is, apart from having to install agents and that kind of thing, you have to use different techniques to get different types of information. For anyone who's familiar, right, maybe you have to go look and tail these types of logs over in this directory and that directory, and then you need to use a different type of mechanism to hook into the application metrics or JMX metrics if you're familiar. Tracing is really kind of challenging. You gotta become like a Boomi code expert and get way more familiar with our classes than you should, and that sort of thing. So pulling all that information in, making sense of it, can be more straightforward, and that's what we want. That's what we're aiming to do here. So with our vision for runtime observability, kind of two main goals is to make it much more plug and play and easy to work with all of those tools, and through that single pipeline into those tools, making sure we're providing insightful, comprehensive, complete data and telemetry information so that you can make those correlations. And so the way we're going to do that, the way we are doing that, is a technology, a protocol standard called OpenTelemetry, which is just a way that this type of information can be defined, communicated, and interops with those different tools. It's a common industry standard, if you will. So how this is going to play out in our architecture if we're base here, this is current state. You got the runtime. It's still going to talk to the platform, send back execution history and process ran, process failed, those kind of details, those types of events. And that's going back to the platform. You can view it in the UI. You can get the platform events, that kind of good stuff. What's additional is building in. Don't take a picture yet. This is going to keep building. Unless you want the whole progress, the comment stream. Is building it natively into our runtime and OpenTelemetry plugin, just a means that gets automatically installed. There's nothing else you have to install with it. It's completely managed and delivered as part of our runtime installation framework. It takes all that interesting good bits of information that's happening in the runtime, all the metrics, all the logs, all the traces, and can send those to any of the tools that support that protocol, which is pretty much all the tools that you would care to. The slide is built source. You take that, right? So any of those kind of tools. And this is a pretty big game changer for us, because depending on the type of runtime you have today, in particular some of our runtime clouds, which have multiple kind of different workloads or JVMs running in there, it can be tricky to hook onto and get insights and get information from all those. This mechanism kind of flips the script on that, and it's all pushed real time. You don't have to come and get it. We push it to you from all the different places that it might be generated from. So what kind of things are we talking about specifically? This is where I think it kind of gets interesting. It really kind of meets the road. It's like, okay, Adam, what are we talking about here? So we're talking about metrics. Let me just say this: the things that you're monitoring today, everything that you're monitoring today will be available through this as it's, right? So there's a little bit of status quo, but just through a different, better pipe. And then we'll be adding additional newer things that gives you even more insights and visibility. So for example, metrics, these are the application metrics. So for some of the stats of the inner workings of Boomi, hey, the execution queues, how many processes are running, how many processes are waiting to run, all those things that are really insightful to know if you've got things tuned appropriately, both at the application and at the server level. The Java statistics, right? So hey, how's my memory utilization? How are my threads doing? Some of that kind of low-level stuff that becomes really important when you're trying to troubleshoot and do trending and capacity planning, that kind of thing. And I mentioned before, for certain types of runtimes, like our clouds that have multiple types of workloads, that kind of thing, you can hook in this information from all those different sources will be passed through here. On the log side, you can probably guess things like the runtime, the container log, the individual process logs. You might be tailing these today and bringing them into Splunk or something like that. These will all be available through the OpenTelemetry pipeline as well, with the additional benefit of with the additional benefit of, because we're going to be pushing these out, we can enrich that data with additional metadata whenever we can. So for example, container log entries that might be related to a process of execution that would be relevant, we can tie those back. We can correlate those types of entries and be able to connect dots and help troubleshoot issues much more effectively. And then the last thing, and it's kind of the new thing that you can't, I'll say you can't really do great today, if at all, is traces. And what I mean by traces is kind of step-by-step tracing of a transaction through a Boomi process and all the hops there within. So whether we're talking about steps within a process, or this process called that process, called that process, called this, called that, you can trace all that through. All of those hops are instrumented and have that metadata context. So you can trace it all the way through. Okay, where's the time being taken up in this process? Right? Why is it running slower? Okay, well we find that execution, pop in there. Okay, this step was running slower than it usually does. Okay, well, what else was happening at that time on the server? Let me go over here, look at the server stats at that time. This is the types of insights you can draw once all the stuff is instrumented and collected together. Just another note on the trace piece. This will work for any type of process, any kind of execution modes. I'm guessing folks might be generally familiar with that. So if you're running in general mode, or low latency, or the bridge mode, right, which has different levels of visibility within the application you want in process reporting. All of those can be available through here, right? So in other words, you can get visibility step by step into that low latency web service that you don't really have a whole lot of visibility to in the UI, right? So hey, why is my web service running slower? Why is their response time higher than it usually is? Let's turn it on temporarily by toggling it on without having to restart anything, just for that one process. Get that information, figure out what's going on there, and take the appropriate next step actions there. So this is kind of what we're working on, and what's coming from the runtime perspective, the runtime observability. I'll share just a little bit on kind of the timeline of where we are with this feature. We're in active development. We're going to be doing a limited early access. What day is it? Next week with the May release starting then. And then we're going to be layering in a good bit more functionality in our next release after that. So early Q3, we'll do another iteration. We'll probably expand the pool of early access adopters for anyone who's interested. We'd love to get that feedback, make sure we dial things in before we look to make it generally available a little bit later on in the year, and continue to make enhancements after that. One thing I did want to call out here, and you can kind of see that as kind of a Q4 item down there. One of the iterations that we're looking to do with this is effectively enabling this for cloud tenants, or if you're using even a Boomi hosted runtime cloud, like in a public cloud or something like that, you could configure, you're running in our cloud, but you can still configure your information, your process, executions, traces, all that kind of good stuff to go to your tool running in your system if you so choose. So it's going to be pretty nice flexibility, especially as it kind of plays into some of the other hosted models that we're working on. So that's kind of what I want to share about the vision we got going on with the OpenTelemetry and what's coming with the runtime observability for cloud owners or runtime owners. So it's kind of, again, it's like the DIY approach if you're looking to roll your own. I'll let me pass over to Alex to talk a little bit more about the some of the options we have for a Boomi hosted. Thank you, everyone, for your solution.
Thank you, Adam. Awesome stuff. So hi everyone, my name is Alex. I work within Boomi's professional services organization. I'm responsible for a couple of things, and one of these is Boomi Insights, which is a service product, which we have launched now just under 2 years ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Boomi Insights, but we've been working hard on adding new features to it. And a recent capability we're adding and rolling out throughout the year is runtime insights. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and kind of what our spin on runtime observability is, which kind of complements what Adam just shared with you guys. So I just want to start off with just talking about Boomi Insights in general. I don't know how many people here have even heard about Boomi Insights or have seen it. But we kind of built this from the services point of view to help our customers gain better insights about their Boomi implementation, especially as it grows, right? So when you start having many processes, many environments, many users interacting with the Boomi solution, it can get kind of tedious sometimes to get kind of answers at scale. And so we built kind of analytics platform around Boomi that can help, especially kind of people in charge of running Boomi within an organization get answers a little bit faster. And so it's really, we think of it as like a cockpit, right, around kind of what's happening within Boomi, and we basically provide ready-made dashboards and reports and visuals to help kind of answer common use cases. And so that's kind of the overall premise. And so if you look at it in a little bit more detail, the way we've built this, we built it as a SaaS solution, right? So it's hosted and managed by us, right? So it's not like an accelerator or something that you have to manage yourself and support yourself. It's completely managed by our service organization. It doesn't require installation, doesn't require additional licenses. It's basically provided as a subscription service to our customers. So from an adoption point of view, it's a really easy way to get started because we flip a button basically and it just works. And so we've, if you look at kind of the Boomi stack there on the right, we have kind of the Boomi platform, the SaaS design time, right, which you're probably familiar with, which is where you design and manage integrations. And then we have the runtime portion, which can be installed a little bit everywhere. It can be hosted by Boomi, it can be hosted by you guys locally or my partners. And obviously then like infrastructure of that runtime. And so what we've done is we've kind of mapped what we call services with insights to each of these different layers of the stack. So we have account insights, which is a set of features that look primarily at the design kind of Boomi. And so we have things in there like code analysis. We look at, for example, Boomi processes and the components inside them, and we can provide insights with regards to how complicated we think these pieces of code are, code quality, kind of warnings. We do things along building integration kind of catalogs, classifying interfaces, and we have features around security features, right? So we have like audit reports that can support kind of audit initiatives for customers. If we move down a little bit more, we have process monitoring, which is more of an operational feature. This will look at kind of failures and exceptions within environments, and so we detect error conditions, we bring those insights, we apply all sorts of additional environment processing on them to then help integrate with customer, for example, help desks and kind of support teams to drive issue resolutions. And then at the very bottom there, which is the new portion that we've added recently, is runtime insights. And so this is something we did have initially, but was kind of the piece missing in the overall layers there. It's about providing the underlying telemetry and observability data about the infrastructure and the runtime on which everything sits. And so we already have solutions when Boomi hosting the runtime, right? And obviously we have monitoring solutions implemented already, and we can share that data with the customers. But we always had the gap where the customer or partner was hosting these solutions on their behalf. Well, we didn't really have access to that data, right? It was kind of hidden, and it was under the responsibility of the customer to kind of configure everything and monitor everything accordingly. And so that's kind of an area that we wanted to focus on. So we looked at kind of the runtimes overall. Just over half of the runtimes we have in production today are actually locally hosted runtimes. Right? So those are runtimes that you guys are hosting within your own clouds, on-prem, whatever. And they're obviously very easy to get up and running, and you can get started very quickly. It gives you the best flexibility in terms of connectivity and all these good things that you're after. However, it comes also with some responsibilities, right? So you have to ensure that these runtimes are healthy. You have to ensure that these runtimes are stable and upright so that your integrations continue running. And so often what you find is that monitoring, capacity management, tuning the runtime and making sure it's all configured properly, those are kind of pain points that we see a lot of our customers kind of go through. And we think we can help with that. And so what we came up with is this kind of new kind of module within Insights where we we kind of want to take that complexity away from our customers and help solve that. And so, if on the spectrum in terms of kind of customers having the skill sets, having the tools, and being able to kind of instrument everything themselves, that is perfect, right? And then they can kind of go at it and configure everything as to their liking. But we do have a fair amount of customers as well that don't have the time, don't have the expertise, don't want to invest weeks or months in building out advanced monitoring solutions. And we think this will be a really compelling kind of solution for these people. So it's really kind of an out-of-the-box turnkey approach for those customers that just want something that works. And so I want to talk a little bit about how that works. So at a very high level, we have Boomi Insights, which is a technology solution that we own and manage. And we already have a lot of data available about the environments which you can use to understand kind of what's going on within your Boomi runtime. And we use that information to effectively auto-instrument the runtime with the necessary observability we need to then harvest the telemetry data that can get shared back to us. I'll kind of walk through kind of what this looks like. But at a very high level, that's it. Right? So the unique solution about this is that it's completely managed by the Boomi Insights team. Right? So there's nothing really for the customer what you want to do. We basically take care of everything and then just provide you the output. So to illustrate that, I don't know if this is gonna work. So I'm not gonna do a live demo because I'm afraid of the Wi-Fi. But I did produce a little recording here just to show you two different recordings. One is the installation process. And so I'm just going to talk over it and you can look at it. But the point of this one is, we often, when we look at monitoring and observability, we kind of look at the dashboards and the nice graphs, but we forget about all of the configuration that needed to get there. Right? So there's agents that have to be configured. We have to specify which metrics we're interested in. If you want to do alerting, we have to configure all of the rules and the conditions and the thresholds. And in order to do that effectively, right, you have to be familiar with Boomi and the mechanics of runtime. Right? Which metrics are important, which metrics don't I care about. And so that is really what we've automated. Right? So what you're looking at here is the installation process where, and this is kicked off already, but we take metadata that we know about the runtime. So we know if it's a basic runtime, we know if it's a clustered runtime, we know if it's on Linux or on Windows. And we use that information to, behind the scenes, kick off a provisioning workflow, which will create the necessary dashboards for that runtime, for the operating system, create all the alert conditions and thresholds for that runtime. We then create an installation package with all of the agents, configuration files, everything we need. We ship that remotely to the runtime and have it auto-install locally on the runtime. So you don't even need access to the infrastructure or the runtime itself. Insights does that automatically. And it's already finished, right? So it took like a minute, I think, to split the runtime. And I've seen customers, struggle with that for like weeks, right? So this is completely automated, so no fudge fingering or any issues, from that perspective. And at the end, this final step that I'm going through here is just a restart. So everything's been deployed, all of the settings have been applied, and for everything to spring into life, you just have to restart the runtime. And you can even do that with Insights. Once that's done, the installation is complete, telemetry data is now flowing into Boomi Insights, and we're good to go. And so I just want to kind of emphasize kind of the way we've simplified that whole installation and management process, and it's really a hands-off approach, from start to finish. And so I just, once you've done that, if I move to the next slide here. Nope. There we go. So once you can install it, we have curated kind of what it is we're bringing into Insights. And so again, from the services perspective, we kind of understand the mechanics, we understand what's important, right? And we've kind of configured this to focus the monitoring on what we believe is the best practices. And so we're bringing in at the moment compute metrics, right? So those are kind of your vanilla kind of server metrics, CPU load, etc. Storage metrics, whether it's local storage, shared storage if you have a clustered runtime. Java metrics, which could be kind of heap-related metrics, thread metrics, things of that nature. And then finally, Boomi specific metrics. So those are application metrics that our Boomi application generates and produces. And again, we bring those in. So those could be things like shared web server set threads or AppleQ metrics. We're planning to phase in runtime logs as well. And that will be based off open telemetry as that rolls out. And so I have a little second video to just show you what the results are, right, just from the dashboarding point of view. And so this is a clustered runtime, and so this is the dashboarding view and insights. We have a number of tabs. You can see we have a quick glance view, which gives you like an average across the cluster, like all nodes, kind of how it's doing. We have more specific metrics around compute, kind of a breakdown by node. You can really understand a lot of things around the health of the runtime just by looking at these parts. We've made it easy with kind of color coding in terms of which areas we believe are kind of danger zones. Right? So even visually, you can, if you see all of your metrics in the red, that's probably not a good thing. Here's some memory metrics here, and we think this is really going to help customers understand how healthy their runtime is and get proactive with regard to their capacity planning. And so, next one. Yeah, so and just really get ahead of the game, and so we saw that earlier in the poll, right? To help customers, kind of move up the maturity ladder with the runtime. And so that's kind of just a really sneak peek of the solution that we rolled out. We're not stopping there. Like we have plenty of new cool things that we're working on. The priorities for this year, a lot of the focus is going to be AI, right? So you've heard it throughout this conference, right? AI is a big focus for us, and that's no different for the Boomi Insights team. And so we're going to be sprinkling AI a little bit everywhere across Insights and augment some of the insights and dashboards and reports we already have with kind of agentic and LLM-based insights. And so the first one, guide resolution, this will be, we will allow customers to kind of manage known error conditions within Insights, kind of classify them, and basically we'll be able to record the error signatures associated with those, and then we'll be able to triage new incoming exceptions based on that. And so as the error dictionary grows, the system will be automatically triaging these errors on your behalf. And it comes with a second set of features which allows customers to also store resolution contacts and instructions for these known errors. So you can imagine a world where we'll have database connectivity issues coming in, gets triaged and associated directly with the DB18 contacts, and can send that upwards. Another set of issues related to an ERP system can go to the ERP team, and the Boomi system will be able to triage these online. Smart summaries, these are small agents that will appear in Insights to provide kind of suggestions and recommendations around, again, different areas of Insights. And then finally, the Runtime Insights program itself, we're planning to support additional runtimes. And so what you've seen today, we're able to support Linux-based runtimes, so kind of basic and cluster runtimes. Obviously, we know that there's a big portion of Windows-hosted runtimes as well, so that's going to be our next focus for the next quarters. And we're going to bring in support for Windows, and then looking at other areas as well, such as containerized runtimes as well. And so, yeah, we think this is really going to help customers with kind of out-of-the-box solutions, right? Instead of having to build and instrument everything themselves. We think it's going to help a lot of customers with their runtime stability. If you want to know more about Boomi Insights, if you haven't heard about it, there's some good documentation on our website. You can come chat to me as well.